It's not just a spaceship. It's a transformer.
Hello and welcome to Intoxicated Masculinity, where we talk about drinking culture, pop culture, politics, and anything else that comes up. Joining me as always is Brandon.
Hello, my people.
And Jim.
Hello, everybody.
Kale's not feeling well today, and so we're going to go ahead without him, hoping he's feeling better. And his list for the day I have. So I'm going to go ahead and read his list. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it justice, but we'll at least bring up the ones that he wanted to bring up. So this week we are going to talk about, since we've been talking about some pretty serious stuff recently, we thought we'd do something a little more fun and a little less depressing. And so we're going to talk about spaceships, specifically our favorite spaceships in sci-fi or other fictions. But before we go out of this world, let's go into a glass. Brandon, what are you having?
Well, aside from some water, I am also having some eggnog with some Knob Creek 9.
Fair enough. You guys will have just seen, or maybe 2 weeks ago, will have seen my video on Venezuelan eggnog, otherwise known as ponche crema, which we did 2 different ways and which was very tasty both ways. Jim, what are you having?
I am having a snake bite, half Guinness, half hard apple cider, and Iowa City. I will note that it's called the Black and Gold.
Fair enough.
It's pretty tasty.
We will forgive you for that. This is an Iowa State household. It's fine though. So after doing a lot of very serious episodes, this feels like more of a dessert episode. So I'm having a dessert bourbon. We're having some Woodford Reserve Double Oaked. I haven't opened this bottle up yet. The last bottle just had a little bit left in it. So I'm going to have a nice double oaked bourbon, which is really, really good for sort of desserty stuff. I recommend it with cheesecake or with ice cream or with breakfast. You know, whatever you feel needs just a little bit more of a desserty twist on.
Put all of that on breakfast.
Absolutely. So I think let's start off with I think we're going to start off with kale. So basically what we're doing is these are our favorite spaceships from various science fiction properties. Now, what we did confine ourselves to is no more than one spaceship per franchise, which there are a couple of franchises out there that have, you know, that we could hypothetically have all of our picks from. But I thought that was a little boring, and so we are confining ourselves to one property. Although I do have a couple of honorable mentions from the same franchise, but that doesn't count. And also, we can break the rules anytime we want because we're grown-ups. So Kale's first pick is the Scimitar, which is a Riemann spaceship from Star Trek Nemesis. Star Trek Nemesis, famously not my favorite Star Trek movie. This ship is very cool, though. It's they really a lot of times in Star Trek they reuse similar designs over and over and over again. Even sometimes when those designs are very good, they get a little old. But the Scimitar is very different. It's a bird of prey. It sort of looks like a Klingon bird of prey, just a little bit, but it's very much redesigned. It's sort of shorter. It's a huge ship, but as far as like the look of it, the nose is a little stubbier, and it's just a really neat ship. And it has Ron Perlman and Tom Hardy on it. So how could it not be a great ship? Brandon, Jim, do you guys remember Nemesis very much?
I do not.
I think so. I can't tell you that I remember that ship specifically, though.
It's the one where Tom Hardy plays evil Picard.
And he gets all green.
Yeah. To be honest, it's not a good movie. On the channel at some point we are going to do the we did sort of the front 6 Star Trek movies with the original cast. At some point we'll do sort of the back ones. And spoiler alert, Nemesis will not be ranked particularly high in that list. Jim, what about you?
I was looking up a picture of the ship. What did you ask me?
Do you remember the movie at all?
I don't really remember the movie. I know I've seen all the movies, and for some reason, like, this is not ringing a bell.
I rewatched this relatively recently. And so my complaints about the movie didn't extend to the ship. The ship is very cool. But the movie less so.
Not so much.
It's just one of these things I think where they didn't. I don't know, and we'll talk about this when we end up getting into the Star Trek: The Next Generation and Kelvin timeline movies. The Next Generation just didn't translate to movies nearly as well as the original series did, and I've never quite figured out why. Because the Next Generation has great characters. I love all the characters, but I think even the best of the movies didn't translate as well as even maybe some of the more middling of the original series. And I don't know.
I feel like the Next Generation movies were just, as evidenced here, forgettable for me. They all just, I have a hard time like separating.
I'm still a
what
big
actually
First
happened
Contact.
in the. What's that?
I'm still a big First Contact fan.
Yeah, I won't say where I place them right at the moment, but yeah, it's strange. I don't know. I feel like the original series just has such high heights that I think the Next Generation films never quite live up to. Even though I think the Next Generation series is much better than the original series, like really not even close. Anyway, moving past Star Trek, at least for now. Brandon, what is your number 5?
Well, technically not moving past Star Trek yet. I had originally thought about just putting the Enterprise on there because it was kind of, as a kid, my initial like the first time I even thought of a spaceship, it was based on Enterprise. But it seemed too like almost no chance that nobody else would put it on there, or that everybody else just thought about it. Like, you don't have to go far into sci-fi to think of that one. But I did want to include a Star Trek one, and one of my favorites from the entire set of series is the Bajoran lightship. From Deep Space Nine that Sisko and I think his son kind of helped build. I thought that thing was really cool. I love the idea of this kind of early space travel. I thought it was legitimately a beautiful ship, especially when they show it, like kind of sailing around the star and all that. I could
It's
see
funny
how
when you see the Bajoran lightship, I was thinking about like a Bajoran fighter, but you're talking about that old one that Sisko and his son build.
Yeah.
No, that was a very cool ship. I didn't even think about that one, to be honest.
I thought that one was really neat. I like the idea because it reminds you of like, you can picture like old, like ancient civilizations building their first ships that crossed an ocean or something. And this has star travel technology on it, but it's also very early in the development. I don't know. I thought it looked really cool. I thought it was shot really well. It takes you out of the, like you could look at it and go, wow, I could see that thing existing. And you don't even feel like you're watching sci-fi. You almost feel like you're watching like footage of the first voyage of this thing. It was really neat.
And so I agree that the ship is really neat looking, but even on top of that, you get some great world building in the series because, as much as the Bajorans and the Cardassians hate each other, that's the ship that first took somebody from Bajor to Cardassia Prime. And so that's like what is now Cardassia Prime. So that's like the first time the Bajorans and the Cardassians met each other. And spoiler alert, things didn't go well from there. They had some minor disagreements. I don't know, Jim, you're not a fan. Go ahead, sorry.
Some minor enslavements.
Just a little bit. Jim, you're not as familiar with DS9, so I'm assuming you're not super familiar with this ship.
No, I did look it up, and it is a beautiful solar sail ship.
I mean, hypothetically, solar sail ships can be possible, I think. At least that's my understanding anyway.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Okay, Jim, what is your number 5? Or if you, so sometimes we rank these, sometimes we don't. It's not that particularly important. What is the first ship you'd like to talk about of 5 ships?
The first one is from Star Trek. It's not a particularly special ship. I just love the design of it. And it's the ETA-2 Actis class interceptor, better known as a Jedi Starfighter. It's, from Revenge of the Sith, got a lot of screen time. It's So it's a very small fighter. It has panels that pop in and pop out. I did not know this before. Apparently, those are for radiating heat from the engines. I had always thought that the TIE fighters had those as solar panels, but the things that I read about the ship said that the TIE fighters are kind of a evolution of this ship, and that those are actually for radiating heat from the engines. The ETA is this interceptor has been stripped down from previous versions to make it light, and it's to make it light and agile. They left off a hyperdrive, so in the movies, when you see them using these ships for hyperdrive, they have to dock to a hyperdrive ring.
Is this the one that Obi-Wan Kenobi takes out to the clone thing? Trying to remember.
I think maybe the one that he takes out there is a pointy-nosed one. So this is the one that Anakin and Obi-Wan were piloting during the big battle above Coruscant.
Oh, okay, yeah. It looks like there's like maybe even a couple of different versions of it.
Yeah.
Brandon, the ETA-2 Actus class.
I'm sorry, I don't remember that one.
So, Jim, you're talking about the one from the first movie where Anakin goes up to participate in the fighting, right?
Is it the
No, the Revenge of the Sith, the last movie,
Oh, okay.
where Obi-Wan has the droids that are trying to wreck his ship, and Anakin rubs their two ships together to get the droids off, and that was a bad idea,
Sounds a little dirty
Yeah.
when you say it like that.
right?
You want to rub ships?
I'll throw a picture of it up in a minute.
at first
Well,
I was
and
thinking about sorry.
And presumably, editing Mike will be putting in a little video possibly of this. Although Walt Disney does love their copyrights, so we'll see how much I can actually put in.
I was thinking of the one that Anakin and Ahsoka travel around in the cartoon. I was thinking of that one.
I'm not really sure. I don't remember exactly what they travel around in. But
Yeah,
there you
that's
go.
the one I pulled up.
Yeah, that's the one I was picturing at first.
Yeah, by the way, this is sort of why we had one ship per franchise, because Star Trek and Star Wars, like I could easily put together an entire list just of Star Trek ships.
Right.
Because I love tons and tons of Star Trek ships. So I'm going to go with my number 5, and I'm going to say the name of the ship, but I will have to probably say what it actually is because nobody will remember the name. It's the Trimaxian drone ship from a little 80s movie called Flight of the Navigator. So it is just a really, really cool, like silver ship with the voice of Pee Wee Herman.
Well, excuse me.
And a little kid is flying around it. It's very, very, it's weird because it doesn't really, it feels like a very different design than other sci-fi ships at the time. Like it is,
Because
it
it
is
can
very,
change shapes.
well, yeah, also can change shapes. It has like the fast travel shape and sort of the just traveling around on Earth shape. And it, I don't know, it just looks really neat. And it's sort of, I mean, you assume it's made from some kind of a liquid metal.
Yeah.
Because of the steps and everything. But it's kind of a neat ship, and it essentially can pilot itself, but it needs, a 12-year-old kid, because then 12-year-old kids will watch it.
Well, and it's got the chair with the 2 arms that you can kind of steer, and the giant view screen outside.
By the way, I guarantee those things actually didn't do anything. That's just something the ship put in there to make him feel like he was doing something.
Yeah.
Jim, are you
But
familiar
then
with
it
the
can
movie?
also be a ball.
It's been forever since I watched the film, but I know what you're talking about.
But it's just cool. It's and that was kind of very much a childhood fantasy of a starship, because like the kid gets to fly, the fastest ship in the universe, and that's
Yet it seemed
cool.
like there were, I don't know if several, but there was another movie around that time, was it Explorers or something like that, where the kids made a spaceship out of like a carnival ride piece, and
I don't remember.
I don't
that.
recognize it,
And-
but that sounds exactly like something they would have made in that time period. Okay, so now, Kale. Yeah, so this is the Gunstar 1. Which is from a little 80s film called The Last Starfighter. I've never seen this movie, so Brandon, I'm relying on you to sort of talk about it maybe a little bit.
Well, as far as the actual ship itself, I guess I don't remember its exact look, but it's kind of, as I recall, it's like long and thin, and it basically holds two people. And it kind of feels like when they're filming the two people in the ship, it kind of feels like you're watching a fighter jet that can go in space. And it's got the big red and white button that you're not supposed to press unless it's a dire emergency, and then it just flips around and shoots everything in its path. The movie itself was really cool. I watched it a bunch as a kid. The actual design of the ship without looking it up isn't something that just immediately springs to mind, I guess.
Well, it's funny. It looks actually kind of rounded. It's kind of an interesting design. And if you want to see, or if you want to read The Last Starfighter, just written by somebody else with slightly different words, read Armada, because that's what Armada is. Just basically a total ripoff of The Last Starfighter. And for some reason, they never got sued for it. Jim, were you a Last Starfighter fan?
Yeah, when it came out, I think I probably saw it a couple times. I really liked the design of the ship. It is kind of a unique design to it. It kind of looks different when it's setting up versus flying. But yeah, I remember liking the ship quite a bit. Although the button that shoots everything didn't really make any sense to me. It's like, why wouldn't you just press that first?
Yeah, this is
But
the win condition here. Just press that button.
The thing is, in the 80s, there was just all sorts of red buttons that you weren't supposed to press, that when you press them, something awesome would happen.
Yeah.
And like, I just wanted one, like, don't press that button, they press it, and just everybody dies. Like, it just releases poison gas into the cabin, and they all die. They're like, I told you not to touch it, now we're all going to die.
All paths lead to doom.
So as an aside, I looked this up and got some marketing that is sucking me in. There's a Gunstar T-shirt that looks like Top Gun. Just who doesn't need that?
Okay.
I'm not surprised he chose that.
I kind of thought it'd be higher, to be honest.
Yeah.
So Brandon, what is your number 4?
Okay, so this one, too, like the Enterprise, seemed like it was going to be a little bit too obvious. But again, as a kid, this is like my second introduction to the idea of a spaceship and the idea of scale and size in space. The Star Destroyer from Star Trek or Star Wars. You see it kind of like come in over the top of the screen, when you're first watching it, and it just keeps going, and it's enormous. I mean, you could carry an entire civilization on this thing, and there's more than one of them, it just keeps going. And I don't know. I always thought that was really cool footage. Again, it really felt like you're out in space. Like you can imagine being like a little ship and just seeing this thing go over you, and like all the stars are blocked out for like a good 5 minutes as this thing passes above. I don't know. I always thought it was really cool.
So I'm going to call substitution, and I'm going to put something else in as my number 4, because my original number 4 was in fact the Star Destroyer. It's a great design. And I think what's great about it is it doesn't look aerodynamic. It doesn't look like it's particularly designed to look cool, which is kind of what it looks like. It's designed by an empire to be big and intimidating and like a giant monolith in space.
Yeah.
And I think
it does that perfectly.
Yeah, in that respect, it's great because it looks like I am giant and I will just gobble you up, like no matter what you are. Because I mean, it doesn't have like it's big, and it's sort of generally ship shaped, like sailing ship shaped, except for kind of flat at the back. with the equivalent of a big, superstructure and whatnot. And it just sits there looking like it's going to destroy everything, including a star. So I don't know, Jim, you are a Star Wars fan as well. What do you think of the Star Destroyer?
So I think what Brandon said about the initial shot is something I often think about in Star Wars, because that first shot is so good setting up the story. You don't need any words to go along with it to understand what's happening and what the power relationship between the two ships are, and that the Empire is huge as it's coming across the screen. And I don't know what happened to that filmmaker. Like, it was kind of all downhill from there.
Well, and what's weird to me is that, like, it's only really at first compared to itself and space is obviously so much bigger than that ship, but it's still, even in space, just feels massive.
But I think, like Jim's talking about, you've got the Rebel ship, Leia's ship, which you see aboard her ship, and her ship is not a small ship. Like, it looks like it's a pretty good sized ship. But the Star Destroyer comes in and just kind of envelops it. And not like it climbs, it's like it's kind of sucked up into the belly of the Star Destroyer, and it's just kind of gone. And it's funny because it also sets up, like you're saying, sort of the whole upshot of the entire first three movies. This idea that the rebels, who have cool technology and have ion cannons, which shoot ions, I assume, while they have all this cool technology, the Empire is just infinitely bigger and more powerful. And I think sometimes, especially for a movie like that, it's good to set that up. I mean, when you watch the first Star Wars movie, you get the Star Destroyer, and the first boss you see is Darth Vader. And so it's really a matter of just being able to just beautifully set up, like, and you get Carrie Fisher, who's dressed in white and just looks like, she's sort of this strong, sort of rugged woman who's, standing up to power. But then on the other side, you've got Darth Vader and the Star Destroyer, and just this sort of overwhelming force that's represented by the Empire. And if only they had made some better movies, then I would probably be a lot bigger fan of Star Wars. Unfortunately, they did the prequels and then the sequel trilogy, all of which are mostly pretty underwhelming. All right, Jim, what is your number 4, or the second ship you'd like to talk about?
I have this bad boy right behind me, which is sometimes referred to as Buck Rogers' Starfighter, but apparently it's a Thunderfighter. I did not know that.
When I was looking up, that came up many, many times.
It's used for Earth defenses. It's heavily armed with 8 laser cannons, 4 on each pointy part. It does seem like this shares a lot of design elements with the snow speeder from Empire Strikes Back. And I'm not really sure which one predated the other one. I feel like maybe the Buck Rogers one is first, but they came out pretty close to the same time. So both ships have a pilot facing forward and a co-pilot or a passenger seat facing backward, and they have the same kind of general shape.
Now that predates Star Wars, right? By at least a little while.
This does not. This would be, I think this is 1980, so it would have been 2 years after Star Wars. Maybe before Empire Strikes Back. I don't really remember what year Empire Strikes Back came out.
Well, this is 79.
79 for Buck Rogers.
Yeah, it says the first episode started in 79 anyway.
Yeah. And wasn't the original Star Wars 78?
Yes. But if that ship is like the speeders, those didn't appear until the second movie.
Right.
But I think in sci-fi, just like comic books and everything else, there's a lot of creative borrowing. And it's like, unless something is really obviously stealing from something else, I think the discussion of like who came up with the first isn't all that interesting. It's like,
No, and I think whoever does it better is. I think that's more interesting. Like, you know,
Well, and
nobody
there's
starts
only so
new
many
stuff.
ways you're going to make like a fighter ship in space.
Well,
There's
also,
a
I
ton of-
mean, things that we think of as classics, like the original Star Wars movie, are essentially, a samurai movie made in space.
Yeah.
So, one interesting fact about this, speaking of ions, is these have ion engines, and most other starfighters in the 3 galaxies and Buck Rogers use gravity drives. So, this is not the kind of detail that I usually delve into in science fiction. I mean, I like science fiction, but with the shows like and movies, I really don't delve into the nitty gritty. It always surprises me how much detail someone puts into, like, who decided that the TV show needed to know what kind of drives this spaceship had? Like, don't they just? I just assumed that when they made a show like this, it'd be like, it's a spaceship that flies around space. It has some sort of engine, future engine that
Right.
us
One
early
of my ships I
caveman
will have to
humans couldn't
discuss.
understand. So why even bother explaining it? But no, it has ion engines, and specifically, they're different than the gravity engines that everybody else uses
For reasons.
for reasons. Yep. One other interesting fact is, I think I vaguely remember this from the show. I watched the show when it first came out, so it's been a while. And unlike some other stuff from the 80s, I have never rewatched this, and I don't know if it's just because it's never on anywhere. But these ships originally came with artificial intelligence pilots, and they had to continue using human pilots because the artificial intelligence pilots were too predictable.
we are pretty predictable. I never watched Buck Rogers, so I can't unfortunately say too much about it. It's cool design though. Is that from the show, or is that one of the toys? Or that's a model?
So this is actually a model, but it's very, very accurate to what was on the show.
That's cool.
Is that your model or
It
No, I
is
guess
not.
it's
It's just
not.
a picture that I found online.
yeah? Gotcha.
Okay, because I pulled off the Star Destroyer, which had its excellent introduction scene, I think I'm going to substitute in the only ship that maybe had a better introduction scene than the Star Destroyer, maybe because they blatantly ripped it off, and was much, much bigger. And that, of course, is Spaceball 1. Because there are no ship in the galaxy that can match the incredible, some might say ludicrous speed of that particular ship. I don't know. It's just great and how ridiculous the thing is designed, and it just keeps going and going. Because the Star Destroyer is big, and so it's intimidating. But Spaceball 1 is so big that you start to get irritated with it. And I think it's kind of cliche to like Spaceballs anymore, but I still think that movie's really, really great. It's got a great, Rick Moranis and Bill Pullman and John Candy, and just, really cool cast. And that ship it's so memorable. I thought about maybe the Winnebago, which the Winnebago is great too. But the Winnebago can't go to Plaid.
So
No.
how close do you think the Mandalorian ship is compared to the Winnebago?
Oh, they're basically the same thing.
I did not realize, like, it hadn't even occurred to me. I just pulled up ships from Spaceballs, and somebody had compared the two.
I'll bet they're pretty close to the same size, because the Mandalorian ship isn't very big.
Yeah. Also, it has a lot of Winnebago like storage inside. You can walk around.
So what did you guys think of Spaceball 1?
I honestly did not remember the design of the ship, but it's it's pretty cool, especially for a farcical show.
I can remember that scene too, where it just keeps going on and on.
I love the when Rick Moranis is like, no, light speed's too slow. And of course, his second in command is, of course, Colonel Sanders, and he becomes very concerned that Colonel Sanders might be in fact chicken,
What's the matter, Colonel Sanders? Chicken?
which is just genius. Just genius. And of course, the distinction this ship has that none of the other ships do is not only is this a ship, it is also a transformer, which has the ability to suck all the oxygen out of a planet.
Like a vacuum.
You know, also has a
Mega-
bumper sticker.
It does. What it's we break for no one.
We break for nobody.
Yeah, we break for nobody.
I had forgotten about that.
That's it's just so great because like it's great, like it's Mel Brooks really doing what Mel Brooks does best. And I think kind of being like the best parody is respectful of the original source material. And I feel like Spaceballs very much is respectful of Star Wars / there's a lot of Star Trek in there too. And that like the Spaceballs are just like these cartoonishly evil people for not really, you don't really understand what reason why they're evil. They're just big evil people with big helmets and sometimes they transport people and put their heads on backwards.
Yep.
President Scroob, which is maybe the greatest salute since the full rimmer. All right, so now Kale. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong place for his. So this is another one that unfortunately I feel like I'm really sad Kale's not here for this one because a couple of these ones like I'm just not into this. So this is the Destiny. The Destiny is from Stargate. And I know nothing about Stargate. I watched the original movie when it came out approximately 500 years ago. But there's so much more that's sort of related to that stuff. It's a huge fandom. It's a huge, property. And I'm really hoping one of you has watched some of it.
No,
I did.
I only saw the movie.
Jim?
Yeah, I watched the show. Actually, kind of weirdly, I hated Stargate. Only saw a few episodes, just did not like it. And then this show came on the Sci-Fi Channel, and I said, I'll give it a try. And I found it very different than Stargate and really engaging. And then it only ran for a season, maybe two. And it went kaput, and I have no idea what happened with the story.
Can you tell us anything about the Destiny? It looks like a cool ship.
So it kind of looks like an axe, honestly. Like it has a very long and pointy forward section, and then the engine section in the back is a little bit kind of like the Millennium Falcon, except it looks like it's a mile long. Like it's a curved engine area. And then it has kind of like a pyramid structure close to the back. I assume that's like the command deck or something like that.
It's Star Destroyer adjacent, I feel like. Like it feels like it's more sleek than the Star Destroyer, but it's definitely kind of has similar affects, I think.
Yeah.
I kind of thought it looked like a sword that just was missing the hilt or the handle.
A little bit. And I don't really remember a lot of the plot of the show. It seems like maybe they jumped through space and got lost or something like that.
You mean they got lost in space?
Yeah. Something like that.
Oh, I just looked it up. Yeah, that is a cool looking one. Kind of looks like a space manatee.
So Kale, I'm sorry I can't talk more about this shit, but I don't know anything about Stargate. Apologies. Brandon, what is your number 3?
Okay, so my number 3 is a Saiyan space pod. I realize that, much like the last one, I'm probably the only one here that knows about these, but the Saiyan space pod is a single person spaceship. It's basically just a giant ball. I don't know how it propels itself. They never talk about that. There doesn't seem to be an engine. It's essentially a chair strapped into a sleeping pod with some sort of propulsion. and it's built so strong that it can just crash. It doesn't have to land. It can just crash onto whatever planet it's aimed at, and then they just get out and they can later take off on it. It's really kind of neat because it's the utility of the thing is maximized.
It is very eyeball-like.
This is from Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah. I don't know. I thought it was really cool the first time I saw it. I recently just went through the series up until Frieza again, and I don't know. I think it's really it's definitely a spaceship that would be designed by a civilization who sends out one or two people to conquer an entire planet. They didn't need teams. They needed maybe two.
You know, interestingly, the spaceship that this reminds me most of is the egg from Mork and Mindy. So Mork has a control seat with all the controls and stuff, and an eggshell on top. And I remember it specifically because I had a toy. Why Mork and Mindy had a toy? I mean, they made toys out of everything. And that bottom half of his spaceship, because the top part popped off, was my control seat for everything my action figures did. It was the captain's chair of the Enterprise, what have you.
I thought it just kind of looked like an escape pod. It looks very escape pod-y.
It kind of does, except that it's their main ships. Like every Saiyan kind of has one, and they just go around in those. I don't know. Like I said, to me, it very much makes me think of this is a race that is so confident that their guys can, destroy a planet or take over an entire planet just on one or two people alone. Like the first Saiyan to land is Goku, the main star of the show. His name in Saiyan is Kakarot. And he was sent there as a baby in one of these ships, and he was meant to take over the entire planet. They kill everybody on the planet so they can sell it later to a highest bidder. But
so there's a lot of Superman and Goku, then, I assume.
Yeah, well, it's the kind of the beginning of the whole transform into the next stage thing.
But I mean, like, baby from another planet sent to Earth to then grow up and have superpowers and, decide whether you're going to be a good guy or a bad guy kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, kind of. I will say, it seems like from like I've seen some Dragon Ball on and off. It seems like kind of from the original series, the Saiyans were more like Hulk or Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Like he would transform and he had a tail, right? And am I remembering that right?
Well, Goku did, but he was hit on the head and forgot his entire mission. He didn't know that they just thought he was a weird Earthling that had a lot of strength and a tail. So you don't really find out about.
That seems like a weird assumption.
You don't really find out.
He's just superhuman and has a tail. Other than that, he's just normal.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, the Dragon Ball Z world is something that I know literally nothing about, except for I know there's a lot of like Superman versus Goku, which one would be stronger kind of things. And unfortunately, the unsatisfying answer to all of those questions is it depends on who writes it.
Well, and on a side note, like I said, I just got done with the entire beginning of Z all the way through the Frieza arc, through the Frieza fight. And honestly, it's not quite as good as I remember it the first time I saw it. I think Dragon Ball Z was one of the first introductions I had to anime. And looking back on it, there really isn't that much character development. The Goku is the Mary Sue, that just cannot do anything wrong, the perfect guy. The only one that goes through any kind of development really is Vegeta, the main bad guy of the first arc. And it takes a long time, so I guess that's fine. But I mean, a lot of them just are the good are good, and the bad guys like Frieza is just this bad guy for no particular reason. He never learns anything. Like he can sense that Goku is stronger than he is at some point, but he still just comes up with one-liners and saying how he's never going to be defeated and all this. It just wasn't as good as I remember. But
Is that the guy with the white shoulder pads and the blue suit?
that's Vegeta.
Okay.
So I enjoyed this when I first watched it. But there really isn't much to the show. Like, it's basically like a video game where they meet a villain and he's too powerful and they get defeated, and then the whole rest of the season is them training and getting tougher and training and getting tougher and training and getting tougher, and then they finally defeat the villain at the end of the season.
You'll be much happier following like Naruto and the Naruto Shippuden follow-up. I think they're much better than Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
But according to you, you won't get better ships.
No, you won't get spaceships. That's true.
Fair enough. All right, Jim, what is the next one you want to talk about?
The next one I want to talk about is Star Trek Klingon Bird of Prey. Let me just pull it up here really quick if I can.
Just for reference, because obviously I'm gonna have a Star Trek ship in here. The Klingon Bird of Prey was like way up there as far as which one I was gonna put on my list. It didn't quite make it because I could only pick one, but it is a fantastically designed ship.
So this one originally appeared, I think, in Star Trek. Did it first appear in Star Trek 3 or Star Trek 4?
It was in 3 because they get it in 3.
Right. So it's a much smaller Klingon ship, but it still has cloaking capabilities. It has a small crew, and it's still fairly dangerous. It has photon torpedo tubes, one in the front and one in the back, and it has disruptor guns on the end of the wings. And the wings fold up, so when it lands on a planet, can fold the wings up. It seems like when I saw it land, it was one of the first Star Trek spaceships that I saw go from space to land. I know the Enterprise.
I can't remember the Enterprise ever landing on the original series.
No, I don't remember that at all. It's possible that I just don't remember. I know one of the recent movies, the Enterprise was underwater on one of the planets, which I thought was, for me, kind of jarring because I had no idea that the Enterprise was capable of entering atmosphere.
And Voyager lands.
What's that?
Voyager lands once, at least once.
Okay. So yeah, it's small crew, only a few decks, but still kind of a dangerous ship. And yeah, I made this is one of the few spaceships I ever made a model of. It's also one of the few ones I still have. It's a cool ship.
Yeah, and I didn't realize this, but that means it appears. So it first appears in Star Trek 3, and then it appears in every single Star Trek movie since then until, well, at least until 6 for all the original ones, because they fly it in part 4. In part 5, there's one that's hunting the Enterprise that they end up becoming friendly with, and then in 6 they have the one that can fire while cloaked, and it even pops up in, is it First Contact or Generations? I think it's Generations, but I'm not 100% sure about that. But you do get the even pop it up there, and you can see why. It's just a fantastic design. Like, it looks like it looks like a badass. And I mean, every time they did, like you can see people saw that and were like, well, I want more of that.
Well, and next to maybe only the Enterprise, it's the most iconic ship on the entire show. I mean, when you say the term Bird of Prey, people instantly have a picture in their head of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Which is funny because there is a Romulan Bird of Prey, which only appeared on the original series that I know of, and is very much not an iconic design. It is very much looks like a disc with a couple of wings sticking out from it. And then the Romulans had a significant upgrade once they went into Next Generation. But we might talk about that later. Yeah, it's just cool. It's just plus even like the interior of the ship is cool. Like when they're flying on it, like it feels like, you know, a lot of the Star Trek stuff was kind of about the Cold War. And so this is your Russian ship where it's like sort of designed a little bit more cheaply and it has problems, but it's also very kind of more visceral. Whereas everything in the Enterprise is very sort of sanitized. And you sort of get this interesting dichotomy between, you know, the Klingons and the Federation and how they have different philosophies and they just do things differently. It kind of reminds me of the old saying about the difference between the Russians and the Americans' space program, where the Americans spent several $1 million to design a pen that could write in space, and the Russians used pencils. So again, I'm not even sure if that's actually true, but it's sort of emblematic of the time.
Right.
Brandon, do you have anything else on the bird of prey from the Klingons, not the Romulans?
No, I think it's really cool. I really like the design, and it even kind of reminds me of Klingons themselves. It reminds me of the Batleth. It reminds me of the Klingon symbol. You know, it's just everything kind of has that curved blade, deadly look thing to it.
And yeah, that's true too. And it sort of, again, the contrast between the Federation and the Klingons, like you feel like everything the Federation is designing is sort of very much designed for practicality and like, okay, we want the soft section where most people live, and then engineering is done in the main body, and they got the nacelles, you want to separate those off. Whereas the Klingons are more about, yeah, but how do we intimidate our opponents? So Jim, just a question. If you wanted to have, just based on kind of the looks and the fun, Star Trek 4, Star Trek 6, Bird of Prey.
I honestly don't remember the difference between the two.
I mean, just like the feel of them. I don't know. I think the one in Star Trek 4 feels more kind of lived in, whereas the Bird of Prey in Star Trek 6 feels like it's more like the cutting edge, and it's still got all the clean lines and everything.
Right.
I kind of like the one in 4 better.
Yeah,
I feel like Birds
like
of Prey
the
should be
grungy
kind of dirty.
Yeah, I like the grungy version. And
Definitely.
for sure it has echoes of Soviet stuff with kind of bare bones design, but still effective.
All right, so my number 3. Yeah, that's weird. I feel like a dork putting this in here, but I couldn't do. I just feel like we couldn't do a spaceship without this, and that's the TARDIS. Doctor Who's ship. It may not look like a
Ooh, that was
spaceship.
my next one.
Yeah,
Well, Jim, you
that
can
was
either
my-
talk about it or you can substitute it. It's entirely up to you either way.
Also, it's a time ship.
It's a time and relative dimension space ship, Jim, hence the acronym. Duh.
I know. I know.
I don't know. It's great. It's great how cantankerous it is. I love the episode that Neil Gaiman wrote and directed, where you actually get to meet the TARDIS, because the TARDIS self-personifies as kind of a manic pixie dream girl kind of a thing.
That's such a good thing too.
Oh yeah, very, very much so. And I think I can speak for all of us when we say we are all big Neil Gaiman fans here.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And no, it's like I love the fact that TARDIS never works. Like it never really works quite right. I remember there's the one where they have enough people, like it's supposed to be piloted by like 6 or 7 people, and that's the why he's always kicking various things. And there's like just all these random things, and it changes every time there's a new doctor. Most times there's a new doctor, it changes entirely.
Right.
And it's enormous, and there's a pool, and there's all sorts of other things, and it's vast. Yes, Brandon, TARDIS.
It was on my list. I swapped it out, but it was on my list. Yeah, one of the favorites. Best sound a ship makes when it comes by, talk about an iconic sound, if such a thing is even possible. That would be it. I love that nothing can get through the doors, but it just looks like a telephone booth with a little key to it. And I love that it creates like a little force field, like they can open the door and stare out into space if they want. There's maybe like 1 or 2 of this evil, indestructible family in the heart of the TARDIS, Are they like held in the TARDIS somewhere? I don't know. The whole thing's pretty cool.
I've not completed the full run from Hartnell to Whitaker. Unfortunately, I've watched definitely the majority of it. But yeah, I don't know, it's really neat. And I don't know. Jim, I should let you talk about the TARDIS because
So I love the design of it, that it's just a police box. Like, even when I started watching the show in like the late 70s, like, police boxes were not even used anymore. Like, it was already defunct at that point. And the reason that it's a police box is that it's one more thing that's broken on the TARDIS. It's supposed to cloak, and it's supposed to change its shape to be camouflaged in its surroundings, and it just got stuck. And so that's why it's going around as a police box. I also love that, like, it's so vast that the Doctor forgets about parts of it. And
whole rooms, like whole like
yeah.
like wings.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even though it doesn't really work that well, like, it has some advantages because it's way out of date technology, and so the Time Lords have a hard time like tracking it and making the Doctor do things because he's got old technology that doesn't work. So sometimes they can't make him do things they want to make him do.
My favorite little fun fact about it is the reason that it makes the noise it does when it lands is because he leaves the parking brake on.
Yeah.
In other words, it wouldn't actually have to make that noise. He just does it because he likes the noise,
Yeah.
which is perfect. And the Klaber bell is great for like, well, shit's about ready to go down.
You know, if Gaiman got to do an episode, it'd have been really cool to see Douglas Adams do an episode with the TARDIS.
R.I.P. to one of the greats. Yeah, I don't know. Do you guys have any particular TARDIS that kind of sticks out to you? One that you kind of remember?
I'm not particularly, you know, as far as like the interior of the ship type of thing. I guess the one that Rose is on the most there at the beginning, because, you know, the time stream thing hits her, and I guess that's the picture. I have a lot of it, but
Yeah, I guess I think of Tennant, and then I think of the old one, like the Pertwee one, where it's got all the little circles and all the walls, and it looks ridiculous, but also perfect. Go ahead, Jim.
So I definitely like the redesign when they rebooted Doctor Who in the 2000s. And I think everything about the Fourth Doctor is my favorite because that's when I started watching Doctor Who.
Is that the Matt Smith?
No, Tom Baker.
Oh, the original Fourth Doctor. Right.
Way back when.
It's funny. I think of Pertwee, not because I was watching it at the time. And one of the funny things I think about when you're a kid, especially when you're watching reruns, is you don't have a really good handle on what time things are. Like, you watch something, and so if you watch something when you're a kid, you just assume that it's contemporary to you. So it's like I'm watching, you know, John Pertwee's Doctor from, you know, probably the mid 70s or something like that, and I'm watching this in like the mid to late 80s and just thinking, well, that's what's going on now. And I love him because he was such a like a dandy, and he had like a car that he drives around in. It's like a open top little roadster thing that goes ridiculously fast.
Right. Like,
and he has all this like dandy clothes and stuff.
One step above a Model A, it looked like.
Right. And just ridiculous. Like, everything about it's ridiculous. Brandon, what about you?
Sorry, what was the question?
Favorite Doctor?
Oh, Doctor? Oh, I'm a Tennant fan. I think he was perfect. I don't know. I have no complaints about David Tennant's Doctor. I think he was great.
And he's coming back, is that right?
He has. So I'm confused. So this is coming back to, this is probably out of date at this point. It's Doctor Who's going to be on Disney Plus, which just raised their rates. Great for them. And so Tennant's going to like, it's like he's going to be the Doctor very briefly or something. I don't understand all about it. And it kind of bugs me too, because it used to be, you know, a Doctor would change and you didn't know about it. It was just kind of like, oh, there's just a new Doctor now. But now it's like, we know, you know, we knew 8 months ago that there was going to be a new Doctor and who it was going to be. And I kind of hate the fact there's like not any surprises.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have any problem with the new Doctor, but it's like, could they have just like held that back until like he transformed and just be like, there he is?
Because it's a great surprise for a show where it's like, what other show do you get to kill off the main character and have people mourn about it and have them replaced with a new main
And yeah, and
character?
get a whole new character to replace him.
Right. Yeah, I'm with
All
you.
right.
They should
With
not.
built-in reasons. I think that's cool.
All right, so Kale's number 2. So Brandon, we're going to mention somebody you just mentioned. That's Douglas Adams. But Kale's not. And by the way, finally, Kale has brought up one that I can talk about because I'm really excited about, and that is the Heart of Gold.
We tried to warn you all, but
Okay.
The Heart of Gold's fantastic. It's a great. I mean, just Jim, you were talking about the drives, and of all the ships, it's definitely the most memorable, except for maybe the Enterprise, the most memorable like propulsion system, because the propulsion system for the Heart of Gold is the infinite improbability drive.
Yeah.
And so every time it appears, it has to appear like every place in the universe, and it appears as anything in the universe, and eventually you just wind up where you're going. Which is probably not a very good way of describing how it works, but it's also perfectly describes how it works. So I don't know, Brandon, why don't you start off?
Well, I assume Keel's talking about the one in the movie.
Right, but I mean,
yeah.
it's the same one with the book, basically.
Yeah, the infinite improbability drive is hilarious. Like the first time you read it, I think it describes it as like ending up in an Italian bistro or something like that. I don't know. It's a really cool ship. And I think that's where they meet Marvin.
Yes, because he's very upset at the happy doors that are just
so
the happy to
doors.
open and close all over the place, and just be satisfied by having let somebody walk through them.
Yeah, it's like imagine if your grocery store doors are all like, that was awesome. You would get tired of that too.
And a great crew. I mean, Ford Prefect and Zaphod Beeblebrox and Marvin. And
I will say for me, the characters are what make up their time on the Heart of the Gold special. To me, the Heart of Gold as a ship didn't stand out a lot,
but I think the Heart of Gold is exactly what it needed to be for that series. Like,
yeah, but it's not like
right
I can point to a specific feature like other than the doors, I guess. But usually, it's pointing to the people that are in it.
Well, I mean, it's supposed to be like a really nice ship. I mean, it's the one that Zaphod Beeblebrox's people that like built and then he just stole.
Yeah.
And like it's supposed to be like super luxurious ship.
Yeah, true.
Jim, Heart of Gold.
So I did not remember this. I mean, I saw the movie. You would think I'm a huge sci-fi fan and read a lot of sci-fi books. You would think that I had read these books, and I have not.
Oh my God, you've never read that? Oh my goodness.
So I have a question for you. Is the ship from the movie accurate to the book? Because I see that they had a TV show, and the TV show ship looks very different. The TV show ship kind of looks like a spoon, honestly.
Well, see, that's kind of what I was thinking. Like the ship itself, like I don't picture any specific dimensions to it. Like when you say Bird of Prey, I picture it in my head. I don't picture any specific thing to the Heart of Gold. It's more the characters that are on it, which is why I didn't think of it specifically. But
do you remember what imagining what it looked like when you read the book?
So I've read the book. I've read the full series, I think twice, but it's been probably 20, 25 years since I read it the last time, which I feel he doesn't do it justice. I love it. I think, Adams is he's fantastic. Every time I think of Douglas Adams, I think I should be reading Terry Pratchett, because I think he's kind of Terry Pratchett is to sci-fi what Douglas Adams is to sci-fi. But I just haven't. But no, it's it's just a really luxurious ship that has an infinite improbability drive, and they go around and they end up where Marvin is how many times, like 3 times older than the universe, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, because he ends up parking cars for like 1 million years or something.
I think it's a couple of billion years. I don't remember exactly, but Marvin parks cars for a very, very long time. and he's very not happy about it. Of course, he's not happy about anything, so maybe he is happy being unhappy about it.
Marvin would rank on my top 5 robots in sci-fi.
Oh yeah, he's fantastic. Jim, if you have anything else to say about the movie,
Nothing else to say.
I know that Stephen Fry, I think, plays the voice of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which Stephen Fry is a national treasure, and can do no wrong. And if you get it's sort of a little bit of an aside, but he plays Fiddler's Green in the Sandman TV series, and he is absolutely perfect as Fiddler's Green. Because if you know the character from the comic books, like you kind of almost picture Stephen Fry in that role. All right, Brandon, what is your number? We up to your number 2? Or did we skip your number 3?
No, I did number 3.
What was your number 3?
The Saiyan Space Pod.
Oh, right. Okay, so we're on to your number 2 then.
Okay, so for my
Or
number
fill
2,
in, if you must.
What? Oh, so for number 2, I chose Red Dwarf. I actually had TARDIS at number 2, but I swapped it out with one of my honorable mentions. Red Dwarf as a ship is, well, it's everything you need it to be. But as far as the look of it, it's really amazing. Like you can picture the white sign that somebody's outside painting as they're going along. It's got like that basket in the front of it. They say it's like a mile long, and it's got these untold amount of floors, like at this huge basement, and the whole ship is, I mean, it's got like a fairly advanced AI computer running it. It's got stasis chambers that can hold out for millions of years, and yet it's just a mining ship. Like it's nothing too fancy. It's meant to transport miners to different planets so they can go mine it. And it's 3 million years in the future. It's only Dave, a creature that evolved from his cat, a robot that likes to clean things, a hologram that used to be his bunkmate that they hate, and Holly, the AI spaceship.
And sometimes some other people. Sometimes there's other
but
people.
As far as the main cast of the show, that's everybody in this gigantic ship that actually reminds me of the design of one of my honorable mentions, the Orion. The Orion was not sci-fi. It was an actual concept for a spaceship where you would essentially throw atomic bombs out the back end, and its explosion would propel the ship, and it had like a giant bell on the end of it that would just catch all that energy. So the bigger the better, actually. The bigger the ship, the more of a bell you could put on it, and the more of the energy you could catch. And if you think of the design of the Red Dwarf, it's actually a lot like that. It's kind of got that bell in the back, and it's gigantic.
Yeah, the thing I love about Red Dwarf is, you've got the advanced AI and all that stuff, but other than that, it's basically like a scow. Like it's like a giant thing that's like a little bit more technologically advanced than like a tugboat or like a barge, And so you see like them just like hanging out the side of the ship, like painting this, enormous thing that looks like it's just kind of being held together with like bubble gum and duct tape. And I think that's what makes it great. Jim, were you a Red Dwarf
You
fan?
had a couple of freeze up moments there, Mike, but I think it all came through.
Fair enough.
So no, I always find this amazing that we're of similar age, have a lot of similar interests, and almost every time when we do something like this, there are several moments where I'm just like, each one of us is like, no, I've never watched that, never even heard of it, that sort of thing. I mean, I've heard of Red Dwarf. Weirdly, like I know it was on either before or after Doctor Who for years, and
it was right around Red Green. Do you remember Red Green?
Yep.
I think it was Brandon. Was it before or after Red Green?
No, I think Red Green was first. I think it was Red Green, Red Dwarf, and then in the 90s, you would then switch over to like channel 13 for an MST3K movie.
Fantastic.
Yeah, Saturdays were awesome back then.
So no,
For
I've
people that
watched-
didn't have friends.
I've probably watched like no way. I watched Doctor Who with my friend. I probably watched like half of a couple episodes of Red Dwarf and just couldn't get into it.
I don't know. I thought it's just a fun show. I mean, it's not. I don't know if it's like traditionally good. Like it's very very low budget, but it's just the characters are fun and it's kept going. Like there is still Red Dwarf seasons coming out. Like it's not every year or anything, but they'll come every few years. They'll come out with a new season of Red Dwarf. It's original cast.
The characters are a lot of fun, and they have some of the like you could tell they brainstormed some original ideas, and even though they were kind of if you went over it with a fine-tooth comb, I'm sure they wouldn't be great ideas, but they had some fun ideas for single episodes, like it's Kennedy that shoots Kennedy from the grassy knoll because of Red Dwarf crew. But
according to this, the last season of Red Dwarf was just, I guess, one episode, but it came out in 2020, believe it or not. Yeah, good stuff. All right, Jim, what is your number 2?
My number 2 is behind me. This is a ship that I've kind of brought up in some other episodes. It's from the movie Silent Running. Which is really, I think, a great science fiction movie that you just never hear about. It was made in 1972. So the ship is essentially a botanical center in space. And so there's 6 domes, and you can kind of see behind my head there that they're offset. So when you see it from the front, it kind of looks like a big pod. It's just really unique ship design. The movie is a little depressing. There's 3 of these ships, and they're the last remnants of life on the planet, plant life anyway. And due to budget cuts, they get told to blow up the ships, or blow up the biodomes and return the ships to Earth. And one of the scientists decides he's not going to do that, and he kills the rest of the crew, and then has the robots on the ship throw a bunch of stuff overboard to make it look like they had damage. And that's where the movie gets its name, Silent Running. Apparently it's like a old submarine trick.
Yeah,
and,
so it sounds. So the name sounds.
I'm just going to spoil some of the plot because most of the people are watching are probably not going to watch it. So the guy's by himself with the robots, and he just kind of slowly loses it. And then one robot that's left is left to repair the ship and repair himself and keep on going, keeping the plants.
So apparently this is streamable on Amazon Prime. And also this is starring Bruce Dern. I didn't know that.
Everything was back in the 80s.
Well, yeah. Just a random thing on Bruce Dern, because I thought this was crazy. Because I remember he came out with this movie, Nebraska, several years ago, which was very good. And I was like, well, Nebraska is probably like the last thing he did, because I mean, Bruce Dern is not young. Bruce Dern currently has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 projects in production. Bruce Dern, born in 1936, has 9 projects that are still to come out, or are still in some phase of production. So, you know what? You get it, Bruce Dern. Digstown always going to be my favorite, I think. But yeah, I wish I could say more about Tefal. I haven't seen it, but I will check it out because you can stream it. It is not one of those things. This is kind of an aside, but it's kind of important. A lot of this stuff from the 80s, 70s and 80s and stuff, just disappeared. There's a lot of that stuff that's just gone. Like if you watched a movie when you're a kid, or you maybe watched it on one cable channel or whatever, and some of that stuff is just not available anywhere. That's why sometimes it's good to have those physical copies of things. So just in case, things go away. But this one, thankfully, is not gone away. It is still streamable.
That is good to hear. Because like I said, it's something that like I never see it on Netflix or anything like I never see it on cable. It's been years since I've even seen it.
You can
anywhere.
apparently rent it for $3.99,
Right on.
which that's reasonable. Okay, so the next one that I'm going to pick is kind of an odd one. And it actually, I was sort of there's two ships that I kind of put in a similar category that are kind of weird. But I went with this one because it's my favorite, and that is the Event Horizon. The Event Horizon is, first of all, Event Horizon is one of my favorite horror movies in space. And it is just like the Event Horizon doesn't look like a good ship. It looks like an insane asylum turned into a spaceship. The shape of the ship kind of looks like a cross almost. And the whole point of the ship is it uses black hole travel. So it uses a tiny black hole to make it travel to distant areas. So it disappears and then reappears. I don't remember how much longer. I don't think it's that far into the future. I think just on the orbit of Jupiter. I could be wrong about that. And they send Jesus, names anymore for me are just not working. Morpheus from The Matrix.
Yeah.
Oh, Larry Lawrence.
Lawrence Fishburne and his team out there to sort of search the ship, and they find what is essentially a haunted house. You get Sam Neill being very crazy Sam Neill, some crazy special effects, and it is a haunted house. And some of the they had to very much cut back on some of the footage that they shot because the ship is recording what the crew is doing on board, and as the people come to look at the ship, they look at some of the video of what the crew is doing, and to get a R rating, they had to cut back on that pretty significantly because what the crew is doing is like obliterating each other in the most horrible and violent ways you can imagine. And it is just a really, really creepy ass movie, and really well made and just a lot of fun. I don't know, Brandon, you saw this with me, I think, didn't you?
Yes, but I think it was the only time I saw it. So I don't actually remember too much about it. I know it's been one of your favorites. Well, it's a limited genre as it is, space horror, but I know it's been one of your favorites. I just don't remember a whole lot about it.
It's very, very gritty. It's very grim. And again, like I said, I cannot overstate those scenes when they're traveling through the black hole. The upshot of the movie is essentially black holes are hell. And inside of the black hole, you are in hell. And that's what the crew is in. I don't know. Jim, did you see this one? I know you're not as quite as horror inclined as I am.
No, but it's space horror, so I've seen it. So the one design element of the ship that I just really stuck with me was I think it's the black hole drive or whatever it is, where it's 3 rings within each other spinning. And there's just a lot of great design elements inside and outside the ship. It's an interesting ship, interesting movie for sure.
And the little catwalk you have to pass through to actually get to the drive is really crazy. It's this like whole giant spinning thing on this catwalk, which apparently made a lot of the cast very gave a lot of people motion sickness trying to film in there. Because apparently walking down a corridor where everything is spinning around you is very disorienting.
Right.
Yes, I think so.
And there's one scene where they have to run out of there because there's like a fireball coming behind them, and getting people to run down that catwalk again was apparently very difficult because like the things are spinning and there's lights coming at you behind you, and it was very difficult for them. And Sam Neill, you take this movie and In the Mouth of Madness, and Sam Neill I think had a run of a couple of pretty good horror movies at that time period.
which is so weird because he just doesn't seem like a horror guy, but he's pretty creepy.
Yeah.
He,
In the
he
mouth-
can do a bad guy pretty well too.
So Kale is not going to be happy because I don't really know anything about this ship. I've looked it up. It is from Titan AE, and it is the Titan. It is a siege ship. That's about all I know about it, unfortunately. Have you guys watched Titan AE?
I did well. I'm
No.
kind of in the same event horizon or space there. I have seen it, and I know it's one of Kale's favorites. I just don't remember the ship itself.
And I did not see this, so I'm of no help.
Well, you guys will get to see the event or the Event Horizon. Jesus, you guys will get to see the Titan from Titan AE right here. And now, hopefully, you saw it, or there's a
Hopefully,
copyright
no.
concern and you didn't see it, and then I'm sorry. All right. So I didn't have any honorable mentions from Kale. That was his number one. So Brandon, do you have any honorable mentions you would like to cover?
Yeah, some of them got replaced. I talked about Orion and Red Dwarf already, but there's two left. One is the Architect, and I have to be specific here. It's from a book called Shards of Earth, and I haven't finished the book, so I honestly don't know if the ship is called the Architect or the people is called the Architect. They're basically just a MacGuffin to move the entire story along, but it's essentially a ship kind of like a Borg ship, only it's the size of a moon, and
That's no moon.
its entire thing is just, it doesn't seem to, like nothing can destroy it. It doesn't communicate with anybody. It doesn't say anything. It just terraforms entire planets into crystalline structures and then goes away. So like, and sometimes like it'll latch onto like a civilization, almost like it's persecuting them, like following them around. But again, I haven't read the whole book, so maybe there's some unknown reason for it. But it sticks in my head because like you see them coming and all you can do is leave. You have to try and get as many people off the planet as you can, because they try fighting it. They try, throwing everything they have in it, and nothing really works. They end up stopping it. Like one time they have a guy who can force like one mental thought at him or something, and it slows their progress just long enough that most of the people can get out of the planet. But then like they'll relocate to another planet and suddenly the Architect will show up and just start transforming that planet into a crystalline structure too, and just anything that's on it is now dead because it's a different shape in space. And the other one as an honorable mention was the Swordfish 2. One of my all-time favorite animes is Cowboy Bebop, and the Swordfish 2 is this first personal spaceship of a character named Spike, and it's capable of flying in space, but it's also capable of flying in the atmosphere and Earth and all this. It's actually not very big. It's not much bigger than say like a semi tractor. It's basically it's a seat with a giant propulsion like fan. Like it kind of looks like one of those fan ships on marshes, on swamps, and it's got one giant gun right at the front. It's kind of a cool ship, and the way he drives it, like the further he pushes the handles forward, the faster it goes. Kind of like I don't know anything about planes, but it's kind of how I picture planes going, I guess.
That's how planes might very well go.
I think pod racers do that too.
Yeah.
Oh, pod. That's
I
the
don't
first thing I thought. I was thinking maybe, or even like the speeders.
Yeah. Well, yes, it actually reminds me of the speeders quite a bit. I don't know. The Swordfish too. It's kind of a neat one. Not neat enough to make the top 5, but definitely an honorable mention.
All right, Jim.
So the Valley Forge
Honorable
was
mentions,
one
I
of
should
my
say.
honorable
Honorable mentions.
What's that?
Honorable mentions, I should say.
Yeah. The other honorable mention that I had was from Star Trek. As far as the Federation ships go, my favorite design is the USS Reliant. From Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan. It's a ship that Khan absconds with, and it's just a much more compact design than a lot of the other Star Trek ships. I always felt like the Starship Enterprise looked, I think it's iconic, but I also thought that's a really kind of weird design. Why would they have things like super far apart from one another? Just seems like something you wouldn't do with the ship that's designed for warfare and exploration. Whereas the Reliant is much more, has a lot of the same design elements, but it's much more compact. So yeah, the USS Reliant.
I was thinking that, well, I've thought about this before, but I think one of my honorable mentions would also be the Defiant.
Perhaps today is a good day to die.
From Deep Space Nine, because it's like even more compact than you know, the other ships. It's like sort of meant to be a small little fighter, basically. Well, I
Takes a
mean,
lot
small by Federation standards, anyway.
Yeah, I like that as well. Also, even though I didn't watch very much of that series, I was very excited that they finally got a spaceship so they could go places.
And they could be in. They were in First Contact, even.
Yeah.
The Defiance in the beginning of First Contact. So the first one I'll mention, I put Red Dwarf as my honorable mention, but I think Starbug is pretty cool. You know, it's the little ship
the
they
little
go
green
off
one.
on, which totally looks like something that somebody built in a like a high school crafts, you know, thing, like maybe 3 echelons above that.
Well, you talk about the Defiant. Starbug's the same way, like built to just take a lot of damage and keep going.
So the other one that's sort of along the same lines as the Event Horizon is the Nostromo from the first Alien movie. And I think it's it sort of has that same feel of the Event Horizon as kind of like it's a spaceship that's a haunted house because it's enormous. There's almost nobody on it. And it just looks dark because like it's not lighted any more than it needs to be because it is meant for our space truckers, basically. So it doesn't look like something from the Federation or something like that, where it's like big and shiny and bright lights. It's like, no, you guys get, 5 lights and that's all you need. And it's creepy. It's a creepy environment. And I think the second best ship that was ever invented by Star Trek is, of course, the Romulan Warbird. Because it's the one that they first brought in the first time they really brought the Romulans into Next Generation, and that ship is just so badass looking. It looks like an evil bird. It's got like the big stick outy front end and the I don't know, the split wing thing. That is just a crazy good looking ship.
Yeah, I think one of the things I really liked about it is it's very different from the Warbird from the original series, but also not that different. It kind of looks like you took 2 of the original ones and flipped them over and then tried to sandwich them together and put another bridge section on the front. But like it's very unique design for sure.
Do you remember the Warbird, Brendan?
That one doesn't pop into my head quite as much now.
It's the giant green one from the originals. Every time they come to the Romulans, it's like just look it up on your computer real quick. It's like I don't know. It's hard to describe, but it is a great looking ship. And I never felt like most of the Federation ships could have really held up to it. Like all the other ships against it looked like they were like smaller and less impressive, I guess. Except for maybe one.
So you brought up the ship from Alien. Some of the ships that didn't make my list that I also considered were from the Alien franchise. I love Prometheus. I like the design of the spaceship Prometheus, especially its 4 engines look really cool when it's landing. And I And I love the battleship from Aliens.
The
I think
Sulaco.
right, the Marine ship is just really cool.
I think the Sulaco is one of the best parts about that movie. Brent, so you remember that one now, right?
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That thing's so badass looking. It's just crazy good looking ship.
It's like a space helmet with a propulsion system.
Yeah, a little bit.
Like if the Iron Giant's head got a propulsion system.
But like the front end sticks out, so it's like it almost it almost looks a little bit like an alien. Like the front looks a little bit like an alien from Aliens.
Yeah, I could say that. Like it could have another spaceship come out.
It comes out and grabs people.
The tractor beam is just terrifying.
All right, Brandon, what is your number one?
Okay, so my number one is from a book called Hyperion by Dan Simmons. It is the Yggdrasil, which is named after the tree of life in Norse mythology. It's essentially a giant living spaceship. It's a tree that the entire book, well, not the entire book, but a large section of the opening part of the book is people traveling to this planet to visit a holy place and to see the Shrike. And each person takes their time telling how they got there, like why they're going to see the Shrike. And the ship just takes care of them while they're in space. And it looks really cool. It makes me think like, you know, there was one time I heard, I don't know the veracity of this, but one time I heard that early Chinese sailors built giant ships, wooden ships that had like even like gardens on it, like you could put fruit on it. They would grow like oranges and stuff on the ship in dirt. And it makes me think of that with Yggdrasil. It's just this gigantic living thing that provides them with pretty much everything they need, including protection from space.
It's very impressive looking.
It is. It's really cool.
Jim, have you read this one?
So I hate to say it, I got about halfway through this book and was not able to finish. And that has not happened to me very often. And I know it's supposed to be a classic, and I like some of his other books, like his Olympus, and Ilium, I thought were really kind of off the wall and interesting. And this one just, it got a little too out there for me and just lost me. So I may have to come back to it sometime. I did not really remember the specific ship, but it's been a while since I picked it up.
Well,
I
you will
actually
always get
remember
different
the
opinions.
I actually
Sorry,
remember
what?
the ship more than I remember the exact end of the book. Like I don't remember exactly how it ends. But as soon as you said spaceships, Yggdrasil was the first thing that kind of came to mind.
So Mike, have you read this?
I have not. I don't read things. I'm not a nerd. No, it definitely looks interesting. I mean, if maybe the ship's more interesting than the book, that certainly happens from time to time.
I think the book was good.
It's supposed to be a really good book. It's just one of those that didn't do it for me.
Well, I mean, we've all got our little things where like certain things kind of catch in our mental filter and kind of do it for us, and other things don't. That's fine.
Well, and that first part, I don't know that Dan Simmons intentionally did this, but apparently there's, boy, I can't remember the guy's name. I'd have to look it up. But an old writer, like a couple hundred years ago, maybe not quite that old, but like late 1700s, 1800s, there was a writer who wrote kind of a similar story. This entire carriage of people are going somewhere, and they spend the entire story, the Canterbury Tales. All the people share their story while they're in this thing traveling to this place, and that's kind of what the beginning part of Hyperion is.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. So I just finished the third act of the Sandman audio play, which I cannot recommend enough. It's fantastic. Neil Gaiman narrates, and he's got a great cast. And in the third part is where they go through World's End, where it's all these people stuck in a tavern telling their various stories, which is just Neil Gaiman at his best.
Yeah.
Jim, your numero uno. That means number one.
Right here it is. The original Battlestar Galactica.
You know what's funny? When I was doing, I noticed nobody mentioned any of the Battlestar Galacticas. I was like, I better mention that as an honorable mention because that's a cool ship, and I forgot to mention it in my honorable mentions, and now I'm glad I did.
It is a cool ship. So this is from like 1979. I think we were saying 1980. Just I love the design of the ship. I love that it's not just a space battleship. It's kind of like a space aircraft carrier. The little pods on the side of the ship are where the fighters come in and out of. Yeah, and if you, I think the original show is probably worth watching a few episodes of. I think the setup and the concept of the show is quite good, even if the execution isn't great. Earth's not Earth, but this Federation of Planets has been fighting with the Cylons, and they get betrayed, and all of the ships in the fleet get destroyed except for the Battlestar Galactica. And the Battlestar Galactica gathers up all these refugee flip ships, and they flee through space trying to find a new homeland. And meanwhile, the Cylons are trying to track them across the universe. So
Yeah, so I didn't realize it only went one season. It's just 21 episodes.
yeah, it's weird because it was like one season, but some of the later episodes really were different actors. So I don't know. It was like it's one season plus almost.
And Richard Hatch ends up appearing in the new series too, playing actually kind of a not so great character.
Is the beginning of the original series like the beginning of the revamped one? Like they're being like every few seconds they have to jump again because the Cylon is right after them.
So a little bit. I honestly have not watched that much of the new one. So there are some similarities, but there's a lot of differences with the plot too. Like the Cylons are not infiltrating the ship. On the original episode, there are human traders that are on the ship.
Good.
So, but
I only watched the new one, and so I don't actually remember much about the ship itself. But on the new one, it's especially the first episode or two is really good because it's got this tension where they have to stay at like their fastest travel speed for a little bit, and then they can stop and like rest the ship just a little bit, and then they get this very limited early warning that the thing has found them and is entering their space, and then they have to jump again because if they take like one more shot, they're dead, and it creates quite a bit of tension. It's something to watch.
So you guys have not seen any of the episodes of this?
I have not, but I would check it out. I feel bad because so I watched most of the new original series. Now, Battlestar Galactica is kind of weird because there's a whole bunch of stuff that's kind of connected. There's like Razor. I don't know, Brennan, have you seen all that stuff? It's like I don't remember whether it's prequel or sequel to the series. Anyway, so I've gotten probably 85% of the way through the full run of the original, not the original, the new original series. But there's a ton of other stuff that's very kind of closely connected with it.
Yeah, I watched the 2 seasons. I think it was 2 seasons of I can't remember what the prequel was called.
It was Razor, I think. I think that was like the
No.
name of the ship or something.
No, not the one in space, the one on the planet.
Oh, I don't know, because like I watched right till they get to the planet, and it's one of those things where when you've watched that much of a show and then you kind of fall off of it, you don't want to start again because you forgot all the things that happened, but you don't want to watch like the 3 seasons or whatever it takes to get there.
So the prequel that I watched, I think, was Caprica or something like that.
Right, okay.
It was kind of like the origins of the Cylons. And I thought that was excellent, and then they just canceled it, and so they never completed the story.
Yeah, there's a whole
I
bunch
think
of stuff that's like connected but kind of not connected.
The cast on the new original, whatever that that sounds weird to say, but I think the cast on there is excellent. Really good, memorable characters.
But like Brandon, I think we've talked about this before. The idea that like, let's say you're reading a book, like a long book, and you kind of fall off of it for let's say 8 months, and you're
Yeah.
in that weird position where it's like, God, I read 800 pages of this book out of 1,200 pages, but I've forgotten a bunch of the stuff that happened. So it's like, do I really want to read 800 pages of this book again?
Yeah.
Right.
The biggest example for that for me was I was about 600 pages into The Stand, and somewhere along the line I lost the book.
Oh, that's a terrible one to do that, because that literally is like 1,300 or 1,400 pages.
Yeah. So it took me like, I don't know, it was like another decade before I attempted to reread it and finally got through it.
What book was that?
The Stand. Stephen King.
I love that book, but I understand. What
It's
you're
really
saying.
it's honestly, I started rereading it, and it's another one of those that it wasn't as good as I remember it, but
Yeah, The Stand is one of those. So they recently did another version of it on, I think, Peacock Plus. I can't remember, somewhere. And they changed some things up, and I always find the ending to be incredibly unsatisfying. Like, it just feels like Stephen King is not, this is totally far afield, but Stephen King is not great at writing endings to things. I think the Gunslinger series, I think he does, or the Dark Tower series, has a reasonably good ending. But a lot of his endings feel like they are just not quite there. Like, they just kind of, oh, that happened then.
I was going to say, I really like the Dark Tower ending.
Which is not really an ending.
Well, it's approaching an ending.
Right.
It points
Yeah.
towards an ending.
So that is I'll just put a plug in. That's my very favorite Stephen King stuff. Not every book in that series, but for sure the first book and the, I think it's Wizards and Glass, are I could reread those over and over and over again.
Yeah, I think I reread The Gunslinger once in a sitting, and I don't read that fast, so that's something.
I think most times that I get, and in the few times that I've been on a monorail, I can't help but calling it Blaine, and it kind of makes me worried about being on there.
That
That's
really
a pain.
sticks with you, doesn't it?
It does.
Especially the kids book with the picture of the kids riding on the train, and you think they're laughing, but if you look closer, they're all screaming and they're
Yeah.
terrified.
Did you? And again, we're off topic, but that's fine. Did you guys watch the new movie? Because holy
Didn't.
shit, what a piece of garbage that thing was!
I
Like,
cannot.
You watch the
it.
movie and you're like, what were you, like? This is nothing like the book. This is not even approaching like the spirit of like what. It was just,
Yeah,
it
it
was
was-
mystifying. You watch that movie.
And they
didn't.
spent a lot of money and they got good actors, and it was also like they were talking about doing it for forever, because they were talking about like doing kind of what Disney's doing now, where they were talking about doing a series of movies and having short TV seasons between the movies. And this would have been perfect for that. And then they just said, screw it, we'll just make one terrible movie that doesn't have anything to do with the book. Yeah.
One of these days, maybe we'll just do like a watch thing, and we'll all watch a really bad movie and talk about it. Because like that one, first of all, they cast Idris Elba as the gunslinger and Matthew McConaughey as the Man in Black, and I thought they were exactly the opposite cast. Because the whole thing about the gunslinger, when you picture him, is he is supposed to look like shit. He is supposed to be like he's walked through a desert and he's like dehydrated and he just looks like shit. Whereas the Man in Black, because he's a wizard, has come through the desert basically unscathed, and who's supposed to have this kind of wry wit and charm and all this other stuff. And like when I picture men who have walked through the desert barely and seem like they are just on the edge of life, I don't think Idris Elba in his prime, like a guy that just looked like he walked out of the gym.
Yeah.
And it was such a bizarre movie. And I don't know what to do with it in my head. It's very strange. It is incredibly strange.
Oh,
But
all of this has made me think of one more honorable mention. If you're done with yours,
No,
okay, go ahead.
no, I'm kidding. Go.
Honorable mention. I don't even know. It does have a name. Oh fuck, I forget the name. It's the spaceship in the Mystery Science Theater movie Space Mutiny. It's this gigantic ship that just has, like, it has a basement. Like, it's got like pipes and stuff running through it. I don't know. There's like a lot of like guardrails that serve no purpose, and like they have
Almost
these
as if it
little-
was filmed in a basement.
They have like these little personal enclosed Zamboni scooter things as their way to move around. The whole thing is just ridiculous, but the movie is very much worth watching. With Mike, yeah, it's Mike in the Box, not Joel.
Big McLarge huge.
Yeah,
I think that might be more of a dishonorable mention.
could be.
And so my number one, surprising probably no one, is the Enterprise D.
These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its continuing mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has gone before.
Because like we're not getting out here without an Enterprise being on somebody's list. I think for me, like growing up, you would see the Star Trek films, and I didn't see Enterprise, or I didn't see Next Generation well, I saw some of it initial run, but most of it I saw, in syndication. And you kind of had the Kirk Enterprise seems very like things are being held together by Scotty, but it kind of seems like things aren't perfect. Things are very kind of like tedious. Like the Enterprise could just fall apart. Like you could see that. Whereas on Next Generation, you have this like super polished Enterprise where they're going off and finding all these, solving all these problems, and everything looks so polished, and you have this crew that looks very professional. And I just thought it was really interesting to have. It's like, scientist, warrior people. And
well, it kind of goes back to what I was saying about the Saiyan ship. It very much is the kind of ship that you would send out if you thought one person was enough to take over a planet. Whereas the Enterprise D is very much a ship you would set out if you want people to be comfortable and have all their needs met physically and psychologically as they travel through space, being essentially, or their main goal being diplomats to other civilizations.
yeah, they're not shooting photon torpedoes very often in Next Generation. It's pretty rare. And plus it's just a really good looking ship. Like it's a ship that looks like they took the original Enterprise and made it more sleek and kind of like more I don't know, just kind of more interesting. Jim, I am assuming you are more an original Enterprise fan, or are you more a Next Generation Enterprise fan?
Well, I think the Next Generation TV show is probably better overall, but yeah, I'm a original design fan.
Fair enough.
I feel like the Next Generation, when it first came out, I was really impressed with it. And the longer I saw it, the less I liked it compared to the original.
And then there is the E, which comes out in, I think they use the E in the last of the Next Generation movies, the one we were just talking about at the beginning, Nemesis.
So a question I have for you is does the D always look the same? Because I was kind of surprised that the Enterprise A went through so many refits that it looks really different in its different versions.
Well, yeah, so that's an interesting question, because it does, like, so the Enterprise B, or is it C? The B or the C is just a what's the ship that Sulu commanded? It's an Excelsior class. So it just looks like the Excelsior. And I think that's either the B or the C.
I think that's the B.
And the E, which comes out later on, looks also very different from the Enterprise D. Whereas the 1701 flat and the A look basically exactly the same, or almost exactly the same. So I'm not sure what Starfleet had in mind with each refit, whether or not they just changed some things on the inside or basically rebuilt the entire ship.
Because the especially the engine pods or whatever you call them on the back changed a great deal with all the refits. So
And I don't know, for me, like the D looks like an explorer ship, like a ship where they want all the scientists they can get. You know, they have linguists and cartographers and geologists and just like every kind of scientist you can think of. Because, you know, like Brandon said, they're going for diplomacy, but also they're going for, you know, studying interesting astrophysical objects and all these other things.
Well, and they have a psychiatrist on board and
technically a counselor.
I can't remember the name of the thing. The room that can make every world building you want.
The
Yeah, the holodeck.
holodeck.
They're really taking care of their crew's mental health on such long journeys out by themselves too.
By the way, holodeck
whole
alone
thing
makes the Enterprise D one of the most attractive ships to be on.
Yeah.
Like holodeck's pretty damn cool. And I don't know if any of the ships we've talked about have anything close to that. Certainly better than spending time in hell anyway.
Yeah,
For sure.
I don't know what do you. Oh, also just a brief shout out to the Enterprise NX-01 from Enterprise, because I thought that was actually a really well designed ship too. Like it looks very neat.
you know, it occurs to me while we were talking about this that you could do an entire episode on the subclass of ships barely held together by a skeleton crew that is out like salvaging things.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Serenity. He definitely popped up on my list. To be honest, I don't. So Serenity is a series, or Firefly the series, and the Serenity the movie less so. But that is a show that I remember liking a lot, and you know there was obviously a big backlash when Fox canceled it. But I don't know if that show would add a huge second season or third season. I'm not sure. What do you guys think that would have done better later on, or would it just been kind of a Joss Whedon show?
I think they could have done a second season. I don't know that it needed a whole lot more than that.
I think they could have done a lot more, and probably people would not remember it as longingly as fans do now. Because
Because the movie wasn't very good.
My suspicion is that it would have gone downhill, and then people would be lamenting that they ruined it.
Well, like, but that one, the Cowboy Bebop has a ship like that. Book that Shards of Earth has one called the Vulture God, which is a lot like that. Essentially, Starbug is, you know, just this kind of small nuts and bolts, barely being held together that has like 5 crew that kind of encounter all kinds of different missions and you know, happenstances that they have to adapt to, and the ships almost become kind of a character in themselves on those.
Well, actually, there's a whole race in Star Trek that goes around basically just stealing technology from people and like acquiring their own little things, and they're like the most irritating race in the universe. And I'll see if I can't find the name. It's escaping me at the moment, but yeah. So yeah, there's kind of the universal junk haulers.
You guys hold on for a minute.
I can. But yeah, the one just since we're kind of taking a lull before we end things out, watch Enterprise. Enterprise is good. Enterprise really is a good show. Especially like the second season good, third season really good. And then the fourth season is kind of a little all over the place, but the shows are good. The individual shows are good. You get to see sort of the earliest, well, until the last season of Picard, the earliest scenes of the Mirror universe. And that's kind of cool.
Got pretty tired of the opening credits pretty quick on that one.
Okay, the intro song for Enterprise sucks. we'll just say we all understand and there's a slightly different version after season 1 that is also sucks.
I do like the series of like time jumps showing the history of them making the ships. I think that's really cool. It's just the song
But do you
itself.
have faith of the heart? I think that's the real
No.
question.
No, I returned my unused portion of Faith of the Heart.
One of these days we'll do a follow-up to this with our top 5 favorite captains. And I'll tell you what, Archer's higher on my list than people might think. He's good. In fact, if you look in the sort of modern Star Trek, his name comes up every so often. There's a lot of things that were named after him because Archer's sort of the first captain that goes out and, does the exploration thing. All right. With all that being said, we sort of revealed our top 5 spaceships and a whole bunch of other honorable mentions. Brandon, do you have anything you want to add? Any honorable mentions that you didn't honorably also mention?
No, I think I finally got them all out.
All right. Sounds good. Jim, you?
No, I'm very satisfied with my list.
All right. I think I'll just close up by, watch Star Trek Enterprise. It's underrated. You should see it. It's good. I'll even tell these guys to watch it. That being said, I want to thank everybody for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Have a good drink.